Welcome, everyone. I am pleased to have uh, a guest conversation partner, Elizabeth Spiegel, here with me to talk about the chess steps method. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining. Um,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, Elizabeth teaches chess at the middle school IS 318 in Brooklyn, New York. Her program there is like one of the most successful chess programs in the Western Hemisphere, and it was the subject of the 2012 documentary Brooklyn Castle. And Elizabeth has also received the Chess Educator of the Year award in 2019 from the University of Texas at Dallas. Um, so, Elizabeth, you have been teaching full time at IS 318 for like over 25 years, right?
Yeah, I've been there for 25 years. First, I was with Chess in the Schools, so not so full time. And then I have been there full time since 2007, I
Okay,
think.
got it. And so, like during that time, like approximately how many national championships have your students won, or have you completely lost count?
It's tough because the USCF records online don't go back past like 2007.
Right.
So we're not 100%. But I think we've won the national junior high 7 times, the once twice in 1 year because they have K8 and K9 sections and we split the team and we won both.
Amazing.
We won elementary twice and we won the national high school once, which was like the big
Yeah, yeah. So,
jazz hands.
and you guys are like the only middle school to have ever won the national high school team championship. Is that right?
That's true.
Right. So the bottom line is that Elizabeth is doing great work there at IS 318, and so like me, Elizabeth is like a big fan of the chess steps method, and so I just want to like talk a little bit about what the chess steps method is. It's uh, it's a curriculum, a chess curriculum of basically of workbooks, puzzle workbooks. It was developed by some Dutch authors and chess teachers. I don't know exactly like when they created the steps method, but it's been at least a couple decades now ago. And I'm going to just share my screen and show a little bit about like the website of the steps method and talk a little bit about like how it's divided here. Um, it steps is like it's divided into six different levels, sort of difficulty, and each level has like four or five books. Um, and there's like a manual and there's workbooks, and the workbooks cover various themes and just like some an example of what it looks like. Like here's just like um, uh, some sample pages from the step three book, and it's got some certain tactical themes that it covers, and then um, there's like puzzles on those themes. So let's see here. Here's some sample pages from that was just explanatory material. This is like example puzzles, eliminating the defense, etc. And so I would estimate, Elizabeth, that the like 24 total books in the steps method, like sort of cover an ability level of like roughly like let's say I don't know 600 or 700 USCF up to like maybe 2000 or 2100 USCF. I mean, is that roughly your sense, or would you give different numbers there?
Yeah, I think I would give a bigger range because it really starts with like how the pieces move and
Right,
like what picture is that corresponds to the rook, corresponds to the symbol of the rook.
right, right.
And honestly, like 6 plus, that stuff's hard. Like I feel like it goes up to 20. I mean, I don't exactly know because I'm not 2400, but
Your
I would
playing
think
strength is like 2100, Elizabeth, or something like that.
when I stopped playing, I was 2080. I
Okay,
think I was 2180 at my peak, but I know that ratings have deflated a great deal since then.
right.
So,
So
maybe I'm
you're saying that
today's.
the hardest stuff in the method is challenging even for you at your approximately USCF expert level. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can't really do step six,
Right. Okay. All right.
honestly.
Great. Great. So, so yeah, you're actually quoted on this Chess Steps website as saying Chess Steps has changed your life. So I want to hear about that. How long have you been using the Chess Steps method? How did you like find out about it initially?
Yeah, so I found out from my good friend Matan, our fellow friend, who's the head of the National Scholastic Chess Foundation. Good job,
Right.
McFadden.
Right.
And he's
Right.
been an incredibly successful coach.
Right.
Um, and he just sort of mentioned it a few times, and
Yeah.
I didn't understand at first how unbelievably fantastic it is.
Yeah.
But it is truly a masterwork. No
Yeah.
curriculum comes even close to it.
Yeah.
And I am so excited to talk about why I love it so much because every day I revel in its beauty and its
That's what I'm
complexity
talking
and
about.
organization. Every single day I'm like, that man is a god.
That man being Cor van Wijngaarden, or however you pronounce his name properly. Like it's a Dutch name. We don't really have good Dutch pronunciation, but it's something like that, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And
um,
Brunia.
Rob Brunia, right, is the co-author, right, right. So I think I also found out or first heard about this chess steps method from Matan. Um, but like you, I kind of didn't really get it at first. Like he told me about it, but I didn't really appreciate like why it was so good, and I didn't even like have all the books that it comprises yet. Like I used some of this like let me share my screen again. I used some of this like chess tutor thing, which is like the like CD-ROM um
You can just download it now. You don't even have to get the
right. Yeah, yeah,
CD-ROM.
yeah. I downloaded. Yeah, I think I did download it and I have it on my computer here, but I don't really I don't anyway, it's like a program on your computer that has some of the some of the chess steps curriculum on it, but like it doesn't cover everything. You know, it's I think it's only for like the first three steps that
But it's a fantastic user-friendly intro for
yeah, yeah.
anyone up
I
to
used to use it like in like when I was teaching teaching in a classroom setting, but now that I teach like mostly private lessons, I don't use that chess tutor thing. I just use sort of the meat of the chess steps. But so since your teaching is mostly in a classroom setting as opposed to one-on-one, I mean that's sort of like the intended use of the method, right? I mean, they sort of talk about like that the best way to go through the method is in a group environment. So can you talk a little bit about that, like how you use it in a group environment?
yeah, there's a lot of great it's incredibly well organized into levels.
Hmm.
So if I'm teaching a lesson on, let's say, the pin, I can then give my class a worksheet where one side is a really easy pin worksheet and the next side is the opposite side is a much higher level worksheet. So I can it can sort of function as a assignment, just do one side or the other.
Right.
Um, there's also a lot of problems that allow for different levels of kids to participate in a discussion.
Hmm.
And maybe I can throw one up.
Yeah.
Uh, um, all right. Um, great. You can see that, right?
It's still loading. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, now I can see it.
Right, so this is like a kind of worksheet called Defend Against Threats, and this is step one extra. So it's a slightly difficult, but still slightly more difficult than step one, but still in the step one.
So I'm just seeing your database view right now, right?
Oh, okay. Um, Let me
You
try
may
it.
need to select a different screen share here because
Yeah.
ChessBase sort of like opens up everything in a different window. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, now I can see
Better
it.
now.
Now I can see it. Okay,
So,
so this is a puzzle. This is a puzzle from a worksheet that you use. Okay, all right. And
and this is
so
defend against threats.
defend against
So
threats,
it's White's turn, and you have to say to yourself, what is Black threatening, and
hmm
what can I do about it?
right?
Right. And at the most basic level, kids can look for what Black can capture, right?
hmm
And then finding a move like, in fact, we have to play Bishop D6 because this is the queen has no squares.
Right.
That is quite complex, right? Um,
Yeah, it's like it can be like psychologically hard to move your piece somewhere where it can be taken. You know, like moving the bishop somewhere where it can be taken by Black's bishop is like sort of harder psychologically than just running away with your queen so that nothing is attacked anymore. But like here, that's the only safe thing to do, right?
do you see this new position?
No, you'll have to reshare. You have to like reshare or switch your share to the new position. That's the thing about chess, basically. Like it won't retain this share. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we got this new position.
Another great kind of position for teaching in the classroom. Um, this is a worksheet called Temptation Double Attack Queen. And in this worksheet, it's Black to move here. There are two different moves that
Right.
make a double attack that looks like it's winning a piece, but only one of them works.
Right.
You have to
Okay, now
find both.
I have to think about this. So Queen C5 check is a fork, but White responds. Uh, oh, but there's also Queen C1 check. Okay, goodness. So I guess Queen C5 check, Bishop F2, Queen C1 check. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you if you're about to explain all this. I'm just solving it for myself. We have to start with Queen C1 check, right?
Right. So Queen C1 check picks up the knight.
Right, right.
And Queen C5 check is complicated. Like as you see, um, after Bishop F2, we have to play Queen here. But the point is, we're not um
Yeah,
winning anything, right?
we can't pick up the knight. We have to trade queens because our rook is hanging. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. So choosing between those two. Okay. All right. So here's another one.
um, oh, defend against check. Another kind of simple puzzle in the sense that it's just like for the most basic kid,
Yeah.
who's in check, what's putting
Yeah.
Black in check, what are the ways to get out of check? Because it's not a simple thing for kids to find two king moves and knight b6 and queen b6.
Right. Right.
And then what's wrong with this? Okay, queen b7.
Right.
Oh, but now it doesn't work. So now we have to find queen h8.
Right.
And then I guess same with
Well,
knight b.
knight b6 actually like we could play that uh because then after queen h8 check knight c8 queen b2 check
Yeah.
then we could switch gears and play queen b6 check instead. But I mean we're going to ultimately have to play queen b6 check here in order to avoid a
Yeah.
repetition.
And but queen b6 check is just like clearly winning.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah.
just questions where like some kids can find who's in
Uh-huh.
check, some kids can find how do you get out of check, and then some kids can immediately see like what the better ways are.
Yeah.
All the positions are so so like well constructed, I feel like that
Yeah,
there's
just
just a lot of
the quality of the puzzles is so great. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like one of the best things about the steps method is just that the puzzles themselves are just so much better than the puzzles from almost any other source. Yeah, yeah. Now, like what for you know, a lot of my private students, they're used to just doing like the rated puzzles on chess.com or the rated puzzles on Chess or like Puzzle Rush on one of the, you know, or Puzzle Storm or whatever. And so for someone like that who doesn't know anything about the chess steps, like what would be your pitch as to like why those puzzles are better than the puzzles they're already doing? Aren't all puzzles the same? What's the big advantage exactly?
Yeah, so it's just like someone's guiding your thinking. And when you randomize the patterns you're exposed to, like you might learn something, but it's kind of on you to figure out how to structure the learning. Let me
Hmm.
give you another example um of like what a worksheet might look like.
Hmm.
So this is a sheet called vulnerability in the opening. I should close this, I guess.
Okay.
Vulnerability in the opening. Um, and they're just sort of ways that one side can attack something that's difficult to defend. Obviously, sometimes not flashy moves, just sort of quiet moves that attack something that's just a big weakness.
Hmm.
This one, though, this is the C version. So there's also within this each booklet, there's like A, B, and C, sort of the worksheets graded by difficulty.
Right.
But this worksheet is 100% on can white either take on E5 or play like bishop B5 check or bishop F7.
Right. Right. So like the Legal's mate pattern. Yeah.
Right, but there's 12 of them. So there's this
Right.
one in which um we checkmate,
Right.
and there's this one in which oh, I guess that's kind of the same. Sorry.
That
Then
one's
there's
the
this
same.
one in
Yeah. Has a
which
different final move.
we
Right.
checkmate with
Right.
the bishop, and then there's this one in which it doesn't work.
Right.
Oh, sorry, it works if they take,
Right.
but
But
it
not
doesn't
right. Not
work.
if they play knight takes e5. Right.
So there's like 12 variations on a theme,
Right.
and it puts the pattern. I mean, people would say it puts the pattern in your like long-term memory in a
Right.
more structured way, right? Whereas Lichess, it's great because it's really taken from real positions. It's the kind of thing that happens, but you're less likely to learn.
Yeah, because there's not the repetition. It doesn't go as it doesn't like thoroughly cover the theme, and it doesn't give you practice over and over again on the same theme like that. Right. So it's yeah, more thorough coverage of stuff as well as the puzzles all. I mean, the fact that the Lichess puzzles all come from real games is is good in some ways, but it's also not good in other ways because there's a lot of positions where like there's noise in the position that sort of distracts from isolating the underlying theme. And these test steps puzzles generally present the theme, at least at first, in a totally isolated, clear way that's easy to understand.
Yeah, they often won't have all the pieces on the board, which is
Yeah,
really nice because it's just you're just focused on what's important.
right,
Um,
right. Now, oh, go ahead.
and then there's one more thing I really wanted to show you.
Yeah,
Um, it's just like how incredibly beautiful so many of the problems are. Like I
yeah,
feel like sometimes when I'm giving homework, like kids don't even mind that they have work to do because it's just every problem is gorgeous.
right.
Mm. So this is
Oh,
one,
goodness. Okay, now I have to solve this. This looks familiar. So, what if
not
we
even
go?
hard, but it's so beautiful.
So, what if we go bishop b2 check? Then he has to step into a fork or else play king h6 and then bishop c1 check. And again, he has to step into a fork or go back to g7. And then we have a perpetual. So he either has to allow a perpetual or he has to play like king g6, knight e5 check, and then we fork his king and queen and reach a draw by insufficient material. Yeah, that's very cool. That's awesome.
But the whole page is like stuff like that that you're just
Yeah.
like, this is why I play chess, this is so
Right.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, I totally agree that a lot of the positions are beautiful. And I notice that with my students too. Basically I use the steps like as puzzles that I go through with my students in lessons, but even more so like puzzles that I assign my students as homework, and then we check them afterward in the next lesson. And a lot of my students comment on how cool and beautiful and elegant the puzzles are. So it's like they're like appreciating the beauty of chess in a way maybe that they wouldn't as much from the practical real game positions from Lee chess.
Can I show
Um,
you some other things I really love?
yes, please.
Um, that sort of I feel like some of the problems allow you to think about chess from a different direction.
Okay.
Um, and they have a lot of beautiful things around checkmate. So this particular puzzle, you have to place a white piece on the board, It has to be a rook, a bishop, or a knight to put the black king in checkmate.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Right. And so this makes you think what work needs to be done for the
Right.
checkmate, like what squares need to be controlled and what piece can control them. And you're sort of thinking in different like different movements, right? Rook movements,
Right.
bishop, knight movements, and often because the knight can control two squares diagonally away from each other, the knight and the bishop are a bit similar.
Right.
But I find these just a beautifully different way to think about
Yeah,
checkmate.
so like okay, so like this so here we could place a rook on d5 for checkmate, or we could place a knight on b7 for checkmate, or we could place a bishop on b4 for checkmate. Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't use these types of puzzles in my teaching because I mean this is a legal position, but the solution is not a legal move. So basically all the puzzles that are in my files are they have it has to be a legal position. Otherwise, I can't like put it in a Lichess study and use it for homework or whatever. And also, the
Mm.
solution has to be a legal move, or else I don't know. I feel like it's like too confusing if I don't give them if I'm not there explaining to them what they're trying to do. They might just get confused about what they have to do, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but but since you're but you know yeah but those are cool too. I do like those, yeah, those puzzles, yeah. I mean, again, something that you would never encounter from doing the online puzzles, a totally different puzzle format. Yeah.
I'm
um
going to show two more, each slightly different, but I think each like kind of brilliant.
yeah.
Um, okay, so this one, you were right that the last one, all three pieces could work. This
uh,
one, you have to choose between two different pieces. In this case, a bishop or a knight on d6.
uh-huh.
Each one makes a winning discovered attack.
Oh, nice. Okay, so if we have a knight on d6 and then we go knight f5 check, he can play bishop takes f5, discovering a defense of his rook on d8. But if we have a bishop on d6, then bishop e5 check really does win the exchange after f6. Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
again, there's a whole page of these, and it's such
yeah,
a in the classroom, like you can give these to kids and they work in pairs, and it's like joyful discovery, and
yeah.
it's thinking in a way that really tests your understanding of discovery and
Right.
defense and makes you think about so many different things. And then I have one more that was also just too gorgeous
Just
not.
speaking of defense, Elizabeth, like the sheer proportion of steps puzzles that focus on defense is such a huge, advantage that it has over most puzzle sources, you know? I mean, most puzzles that you find, not just online, but like in other puzzle books, are like offensive puzzles where the idea is to win material or to force checkmate or to, force promotion or something. Um, and so many of these steps puzzles are just defending against the opponent's threat, and that's such an underrepresented type of puzzle um, in puzzle literature. I think that's just like so great about steps, you know. So, okay, anyway,
Absolutely.
what am I looking for here?
And the beautiful way that like they go over again and again the four methods of defense, right?
Right,
Protection, way, capturing, blocking.
right,
And there are puzzle worksheets where like divided into A and B, where it's like defend the piece, move it away, and there's only
right,
one square it can move to, and there's no way to do anything else. And
right,
then there's a whole nother worksheet um protecting it, right? And then
right.
there's the B version of the worksheet. And I did this so much with kids this year in the beginning because just seeing how the pieces interact is takes so much practice
Right.
that it's all right. So in these puzzles in this worksheet, it's discovered attack, good or bad,
So
right?
sorry, it's White's turn or it's Black's turn?
It's Wade's turn, and the question is, does it work to make the discovered sorry, the remove the guard. I'm sorry, not
Remove the guard, right? Okay, right. So we can play knight takes c4, removing the guard of his rook, because when he takes our rook on b1, then we have knight d2, forking his king and his rook. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean so many advantages just in the quality of the puzzles, the thoroughness, the repetition, the covering themes that other sources don't cover. Um, yeah, the beauty. I mean, yeah. So okay, a couple follow-ups. So, each step has also this manual. book that's like sort of a guide for teachers about like how to teach the concepts, and that's not a workbook. It's not even it's not even really designed for the student to read. It's like something for it's like a teacher's aid basically. Do you use those manuals? Does that guide your teaching, or do you mostly not use those? What's your thought on those?
I love them.
Yeah.
They're great lessons. I love some of them more than others.
Okay. I am not really that familiar with them because I don't really use them very much at all in my teaching. But I could see like in a classroom setting it being useful, more useful. Yeah.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
What stuff do you not find like do you find less useful in them?
Um, they do a lot of end games.
Okay.
And I find kids don't really get to end games until they're a bit stronger
Okay.
because it's never even at that point.
Right.
So I find that like the tactics are generally much easier than the end games
Hmm.
in step, at least for me, maybe because I'm bad at end games. Um,
Okay. All right, that's an interesting insight. Yeah, it's an interesting insight. So now how do you feel about the fact that the method is in translation. It's originally in Dutch. It's in translation in English. Do you feel like there's a language barrier issue? Like when it says like Queen Fork's temptation or like something about creating mate and what they mean is placing a piece on the board. Do you feel like there's a sort of confusion in terms of the stipulation or anything like that some of the time?
no, I find it charming. I mean, first of all, like everyone loves Dutch people, right? Um, but also like I love the mistranslations of chess. Like I love my favorite is what we would call square clearance.
Okay.
And it is translated from Russian as square vacation.
Square vacation. There you go. I could use the square vacation. Yeah, yeah, that sounds awesome. Okay, all right. So you don't really mind you don't feel like it's a meaningful language barrier or anything.
No, I mean their English is better than ours, right?
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what I think.
zing, zing. Okay, so Elizabeth, I know that you focus a lot on the opening in the teaching that you do with your students, and the steps doesn't really focus much on the opening. Like the material that it does have that focuses on the opening is like general principles, development and pawn structure space or whatever. Or it's like opening tactics where it's like tactics that just happen to occur in the opening, but it being the opening is not exactly central to the concept. So do you feel like the steps like lack of focus on the opening, or at least on like specific opening lines or opening theory, do you think that that's a shortcoming in the steps method, or do you feel like most coaches, most chess teachers like yourself already focus on the openings, and so the steps method sort of just complements that, and it doesn't need to fulfill that role?
Yeah, I think I focus less on the openings than I used to.
Oh, okay.
Um, uh, for a number of reasons. But yeah, I mean, I just think steps is teaching chess. It's not teaching openings, and it would just be a different thing, right? If it was an opening book.
Okay, so you just don't see it as the method's purview
Right.
to cover
Yeah.
specific opening stuff. Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. So go ahead. You were
Can
going
I
to say
talk
something?
about one more thing I really love
Yes,
about
please. Yes, absolutely.
steps? And that's the idea of mini plans. So mini plans, and I think I heard of this first, reading the steps.
Uh-huh.
Like the whole concept that you don't need to have a big plan.
Right.
You
Yeah.
need to have a small plan. Um, so they have them on improving your pawn structure, improving your piece activity, exploiting your opponent's vulnerability,
Mhm,
opening the position,
mhm.
and just mixes. And they're
Right.
just small little ideas like playing knight c5 check,
Right.
right? Where they're forced to take you and fix your pawn structure.
Right. So just like a short sequence that like achieves something. That something
Yeah.
is not a grand thing like winning the game or something, but it's something that we feel like we could identify as an improvement in our favor or against the opponent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think of it as like a positional tactic,
Right, right,
right? And just recognizing that Queen D4 is a great move that like totally dominates a position and can never touches all white's weak spots and can never be evicted.
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Mm.
nice. That's nice.
This is a
Uh,
nice one. Exploiting vulnerability.
yeah,
Black to
I already saw the answer when you had this earlier, but it's yeah, Rook F4, and the C pawn is just undefendable, right?
And it's amazing because it's so easy to focus on bishop c5 or to
Right,
start thinking about the king and just to
right.
miss that you just win a pawn. Uh,
Yeah,
And then this is my last example. This one is peace activity.
right. So we must be playing F4 here, right? Activating our rook and touching F7. Yeah.
And it's not like a long variation. Like it's simple, but it's still exactly what kids need to know when they're like 1,000 and don't know where to put their pieces or you know what I mean?
Right, right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, like I mean, the steps doesn't only do tactics. Like I mean, it focuses on positional things too, strategic things too. It does have a lot of endgame material in there. You know, I mean, I know that you said that you don't feel like endgame concepts are always applicable to your students' games, but I mean, there's like a ton of endgame material in the steps, right? Do you not use that as much, or do you have you noticed that the students respond less well to those pages, or how do you feel about the endgame stuff that's in the
Yeah.
steps?
So let me show you an example of what I love about steps endgames. I see their endgame problems as really just thinking problems, right?
Okay,
Something like this where you can explain to a kid of any level, like even a beginner, that it's sort of about time, right? And playing h5 doesn't give black any moves at all,
right,
right? Whereas playing f5 gives black one move,
right,
right? And that's such an easy concept to understand. And there'll be a page of positions that any 11-year-old kid who's just learned how the pieces move can be like, oh, I get that. I,
right, right.
I can't give beginners a worksheet of pages like this because they won't know what they're looking for, if
Uh-huh.
that makes sense. So we
Okay.
kind of have to do the end games together.
Uh-huh.
But it's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love end games naturally, and I probably like over focus on the end game with my students just because I love it so much. So like literally the opposite of you. Um, but I mean, yeah, I was just talking to a student earlier today, like a 7-year old, about Zugzwang, you know. So okay, so let's see what we have here. Oh yeah, that this is uh this is the same end game as Sadie versus Fisher, last round of Fisher's 11-0 U.S. Championship. I teach this game all the time. I mean, this is not the exact position because Sadie's pawn was back on B2, um, but the number of pawns and what files they're on is all the same, and it's the knight versus the dark squared bishop, right? So B5, yeah, fixing white's anything related to bishops and knights, I love and I think about all day long. So yeah, love this.
But there's no book like it or workbook like it that has positional concepts that are so simple and easy to understand.
Right, right.
And I
Yeah,
feel like anyone just that you can get so much from in terms of like knight versus bishop and colors and pawns and tempi and
right.
very rich.
So so Elizabeth, your own kids have done some steps stuff like on their own, like some steps workbooks, right? So you have some experience like doing steps material like in a one like in an individual context as opposed to like a group class. Like how did your own children like the steps? Like, did they love it as much as you, or how did they respond to it?
No one loves it as much as me. Um, I sometimes give it, I don't want to talk about my kids because that's another story. But I'll give it to kids sometimes if they're advanced or even if they just want to do more work and impress
Okay,
me or better at chess or whatever the motivation
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Um, and I really like giving it out, and then they do like 3 or 4 pages, and they give it back to me, and I mark it, and I give it back to them. Um,
Right, right, right. Yeah. So for a lot of my students, my private students, like some of them are going through the steps workbooks, the physical steps workbooks on their own. Like they buy the books, they go through the answers. I teach a lot of adult students, and many of them will just check their own answers from the solution key on the website, and then they'll just bring to me which ones they got wrong or which ones they're struggling with for us to talk about together. Or if I'm teaching like a young kid, their parent will check the answers and send me the ones they get wrong. Or then I have some other students who like I've told them to do that, and then they buy the book and don't work through it. Like they need more accountability. And so I end up sort of feeding them the steps material like in Lichess studies that are populated with those puzzles. And then, I give them a study of 50 to 60 puzzles. And then there's like a clear short-term assignment that they have to complete before the next lesson, and we will be checking it together. So there's more oversight and accountability, and that works better for some students. But um, but yeah, I mean, like in either case, I'm just thinking about like my experience, like sort of guiding students through the steps method and sort of like the pace that they would go through the steps method. I've found that like some students who really take to it and they work really hard and consistently at it. I mean, they could go through an entire one of these steps workbooks, in like I don't know, like just a couple months, 2 or 3 months or something like that, if they're working quickly. Do you find that um, do you find that that's a similar pace to the pace that some of your students are going through the material in the books, or do they spend longer, or how is it different in the group context, or what?
yeah, I mean, so the way I would do it is in a 45 minute, my sixth grade classes, I see 45 minutes a day, 4 times a week. So
Uh-huh.
we would do a lesson and then we would do a worksheet on the topic.
Hmm.
And the first half of the class would be, first 20 minutes would be a lesson, and then the next 25 minutes would be playing ladder matches.
Hmm.
And then I would give a worksheet. They bring it to me when, maybe they have to do 6 problems. They bring it to me when they're done. I check it. As soon as they finish, they can play. So kids who need more help spend more time on it. The other kids have more playing time. Um, sorry, the question was,
I'm just
oh, how
asking
quickly we
like
do
sort
it.
of how quickly they progress through the method, basically.
Yeah, I find that it's step and then step one extra and then step plus is the order of difficulty, and plus is really it's the same concepts but much much more difficult problems.
Mhm.
So to get through a plus book takes twice as long as to get through an extra book, which takes twice as long as to get through a regular step book, I think.
Right. And do you have like a personal criteria for like when a student is ready to move on to the next book in terms of like what percentage they score on the previous book in order to be eligible to graduate to it, or what?
No, I mean I have so many students that I'm just like hurling things at them and trying to get their books back to them graded, and it's not that I don't have all my ducks in a row. It's also like, what book do I have on the shelf at the moment?
Right, right. Okay, so do you have you noticed like a certain point in the method where a lot of kids sort of get stuck or plateau or where it really starts to get harder or anything like that?
I really again feel like like something like step four
Hmm.
extra, step 4 plus. The tactics I find easy. I find like the checkmating stuff simple, and I find some of the more abstract stuff like very hard. All the end games I find very hard. So I really think that within a step, the levels with within the worksheet frames of ABC, I think it's fairly correct. But between subjects, I
Mm.
think chess steps is not so perfectly graded.
Yeah, okay. It ranges more in difficulty than it should between the positional concepts and the tactical concepts. Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay, cool. So, okay, any other things you wanted to talk about with the steps? I mean, we've covered a lot of great stuff, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to like spread the good news about the chess steps to the people. But like, if there's any other things you want to say, please.
Yeah, I just want to show you how insanely, one insanely like specific thing that I love that they do. So there's many different worksheets on pins and they cycle back in difficulty to the earlier concepts. So you'll see double attack in step two, step three, steps four, step five, and it gets progressively more difficult. Um, but in step four, they have two worksheets on um, pin luring the front piece. And then they have two worksheets on pin luring the back piece. And then they have worksheets on pin mix. So luring the front piece would be like taking and queen G3, right? You're luring the front piece. And then
Luring the front piece being the knight being in front of Black's king is what you mean in the lineup of the pin.
exactly, thank you. And then sorry for the sounds of my computer. Oh no, it's not that one. Oh, sorry, I double clicked. And then this is luring the back piece. It's a very beautiful one if you want to try that.
Sorry, it's white. It's White's turn.
Yes.
Oh, I see. I see. It's White's turn. So we play Rook H8. If Queen H8, Queen G6 mate. So instead King H8, but then we've lured his king to the back of the pin, and then Bishop C3 pins. Yeah, very nice.
But in terms of like seeing patterns and like scaffolding the work for students, like if they know they're luring the front piece, like
Mhm.
that's a big like boost, you know?
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's great stuff. That's great stuff. Okay, now there's also these thinking ahead books in step two and in step three, which are pretty different from all the other books in the steps method in that they focus exclusively on visualization and it's mostly like sort of blindfold um, puzzles, puzzles where you're not like just making a normal move from a normal diagram. It's like you have to picture a position in your head that's just written out, you have to look two moves ahead. I mean, what do you think about those?
Some of the ones that I've shown you have been from that, like do you want
Oh,
to
okay.
have the bishop or a knight or
Right,
um
right, right, right,
well, some of them are you have to visualize a position in your head. A lot of them are just like you see a position and then you have to visualize one or two moves.
right, right,
And
right.
that's really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So you
that's
do
really
you do
yeah,
use those thinking ahead books, right?
definitely. They
Yeah.
model what you actually have to do in a game.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Well, uh, this has been a great conversation. Like I said, I mean, I'm glad that we're just able to sort of share why we like the steps, why the steps are so great, and hopefully convince more teachers and more, chess players to explore them because, both you and I sort of took some repeated exposure and convincing before we sort of got the ball rolling with the steps ourselves. So yeah, hopefully we can twist some other people's arms too. So yeah,
It's truly the best.
it's the best. It is the best. Yeah.
It's it's monumental. It's the best curriculum I've ever seen of anything.
Yeah.
So
It is great. It is great. All hail the steps. Um, well, Elizabeth, thanks so much. Really appreciate you joining me here in conversation. Once again, this is Elizabeth Spiegel, chess teacher at IS 318, and we'll sign off here. But great to see you, Elizabeth.
thank you. This was great.